The legend of Dom Smith keeps growing after the DH had a 3-run double in the 8th inning last night to cap off Atlanta's comeback against the Marlins. You got to keep playing him, right? Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on into Braves Today, your daily source for news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball, and you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. We're proudly part of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app or go to FanDuel.com to get started. I want to talk about the stolen base problem that we saw come up last night, how aggressive Miami was on the base paths. I want to talk about having seen a little bit of regression from the pitchers, the starting pitchers specifically, in the last couple games, and if there's reason to be concerned about that. But before we do that, Dom Smith. He's been coming through every time the Braves have needed him. He had the walk-off grand slam on opening weekend, and last night, having already put up 2 hits in the game, he comes to bat with the bases loaded and 2 outs in the 8th inning and gets a bases clearing double off of an 87-mile-an-hour, I think it was a slider, from closer Pete Fairbanks. Clears the bases. Atlanta holds on and gets the win 6-5. And let me just say, Brandon Gaudin's call of this was fantastic. There's not a lot of MLB announcers, play-by-play guys, that could pull off the call that he did. Because of copyright, I can't play it on the show. But ball hits, ball goes to the wall, and the runs come in to score. And as the ball's being thrown from the outfield towards the cutoff man, Gaudin says Smith opened a bottle of Dom on him. And obviously it's a reference to Dom Perignon, the champagne. But just fantastic timing, fantastic energy, everything about the call. Again, not every MLB broadcaster can make that call, but it worked for Brandon Gaudin. And I think you could argue the 2 biggest moments of the season, the 2 biggest individual moments for the Braves in 2026 were both authored by Dom Smith. He had the grand slam. He had this. The interview on Braves Vision after the game was also fantastic. Dom talking about how much he enjoys being here, how everybody likes each other, the chemistry is so great. And if you think about this, he spent time in the Mets clubhouse. He was with the Mets for 7 seasons. He spent time with Boston and Cincinnati and San Francisco and Washington. He's been with teams that were not doing well or do not have reputations for being really great clubhouses. Atlanta is. So he's happy. He wants to be here. And I'm at the point where I kind of feel like you have to keep him. And you have to keep him in the lineup. And figuring out how that's going to work is really interesting. So statistically, Dom Smith's numbers are absurd. And let's keep in mind, it's 41 plate appearances across 14 games. He doesn't play in every game because he does not start against left-handed pitching. And then, even then, they do occasionally pinch hit for him at times. Or he does pinch hit for other guys at times. So the 14 games is not 41 starts. But the team has shown that they want to keep him in the game for late at-bats. Great example of this was last night. 7th inning, he gets on via single to lead off the inning. And a lot of Braves Twitter, Braves social media, is asking, why aren't you pinch running for Dom Smith? And the answer very clearly was they expect him to get another at-bat in this game. And it turned out it was in the 8th inning, not the 9th, but he came through. If you put in Jorge Mateo to pinch run there, maybe Mateo steals second. Dom Smith never advanced off of first. Maybe Mateo steals second, but then you don't have Dom Smith's bat later in the game. It ended up being the 8th. Could have been the 9th. But anyways. his numbers, legitimately absurd. 395 average, 415 on base, 684 slug. The issue here, again, very small sample size. 6 strikeouts to 2 walks. He's scored 9 runs. He's driven in 15. He has 3 home runs. And, that kind of helps to drive in 15 when 7 of those are on 2 hits, right? The double and the grand slam. But when you look at his StatCast card, and this is also early. This is also very early. 41 plate appearances. But it doesn't look like this is overly fluky. Now, he's not going to keep hitting 395. Of course not. But his expected batting, there is a slight overperformance there. But his expected batting average is still a 364. He's slugging 684. His expected slug is still a 564. The quality of his contact has been really good. And yeah, he's had some balls fall that some guys would have caught. That double yesterday, if that's Michael Harris in center field or Pete Crow Armstrong in center field, that's probably an out. But it wasn't. I think it was Jacob Marcy, and he just did not have the same kind of jump on the ball and the range that the best defensive center fielders have. And so, I feel like Dom Smith is one of those guys that is going to be able to perform for you, and you can look back at the end of the year and be surprised at how well he did. Last year in San Francisco, it was 63 games. Remember, he had an injury. He hit 284. This is obviously clearly higher than he's ever done before. But just having this really good batting average and great contact and everything, this isn't a fluke. 2020, 50 games. He played in almost all of them, 200 plate appearances. He hit 316. 2019, 89 games, same number of plate appearances as 2020. He hit 282. Now, I know the argument here is that's not a full season. 2023, he played almost every game. 153 games, he hit 254. 2021, he played 145 games, 493 plate appearances. He hit 244. But a lot of that is also he was being asked to hit against lefties, and that's not his game. He is a guy who will hit against righties. And so for his career, let me just kind of real quick on this. For his career, he's done better from a power perspective against righties. And in his best seasons, he's hitting much better against righties than lefties. For me, the conversation now goes to when Sean Murphy comes back, which we're expecting it to be the end of this month. How do you balance the playing time? And I think it's obvious now. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. It's obvious now at this point, when Sean Murphy comes back, Jonah Heim's gone. I don't think Jonah Heim has shown the offensive prowess to be kept as a third catcher. Kyle Farmer, who's still on your bench right now, can be your emergency catcher. Jonah Heim is gone when Sean Murphy comes back. I still think, though, that Dom Smith is going to be your starting DH against righties. I don't see any way as of now, until Sean Murphy gets hot and starts raking, I don't see any way in which you bench you bench Dom Smith for Sean Murphy. And it's possible that means you start off with Drake Baldwin being the starter at catcher and Sean Murphy being on the bench. Because I think we all agree, you don't want to take Drake Baldwin's bat out of the lineup. There's going to be times you have to do it. He's going to need days off. He has not had a day off yet this year. And maybe they're going to try to play him 162, but I don't think so. Feels like they're going to want to give him a day off here and there. But as of right now, I think you have to just stick Sean Murphy into that Jonah Heim role. Murphy's behind the plate against lefties, where Baldwin gets to DH because Smith's out of the lineup, and Smith's in the lineup as a DH against righties every day. I just don't see any way in which you can take playing time away from Dom Smith. He's already more than made his salary this year. He's making $1.25 million. He's already earned more than earned that money. no matter what happens the rest of the year. But like his whiff rate, best it's ever been, 17.3%. His average exit velocity, best it's ever been, 90.7%. He's not striking out a ton. He's not walking a ton. He is chasing still, but he's not whiffing a ton. He's not striking out a ton. He's doing all the things he needs to do. And at this point, you got to play him. You can't take him out. And if he slows down and or if Sean Murphy gets hot, I think that's where you have the conversation about, do we change the distribution of playing time? But right now, you got to have Dom Smith in there every single time you face a righty. In just a minute, let's talk about Atlanta's pitching staff, right? We've seen some shaky outings the last 2 days coming from Grant Holmes and then Reynaldo López. And let's talk about what this means and where they might be going forward. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby. The Braves were favored in each of the first 2 games. Braves Today sponsor FanDuel had Atlanta as the favorite in Game 1 with Grant Holmes, in Game 2 with Reynaldo López, and spoiler alert, they have Bryce Elder and the Braves favored tonight over Chris Paddock and the Marlins, 1.5. And if there was any of those games that felt like you were going to lose, it was Game 1 because Yuri Perez was on the mound. Braves were still favored, though. And instead, what happened was Grant Holmes struggled. Okay? Grant Holmes was perfect through the first 3 innings. 2 strikeouts, 6 groundouts. Well, I had put in the scouting report, I needed him to get more ground balls, and he did. And then in the 4th inning, he gave up a leadoff single to lost a perfect game, lost a no-hitter, walked back-to-back batters to load the bases, and Miami was able to bring all 3 of those guys in. He threw 30 pitches in the 4th. They didn't bring him back out for the 5th. We found out later that that was planned because he had gone so deep in LA. And then you saw, Aaron Bummer had a little bit of trouble. He gave up a home run on a curveball and all that kind of stuff there. And the last night, Reynaldo López had a similar shaky inning. He allowed 4 runs in the first 2 innings. I'm not worried about the first inning run. That was a manufactured run. There was a single, a stolen base attempt to second with a throw-in error moved the guy to third, and then a sacrifice fly brought in the run. That happens. That's small ball. Who cares? Move on. The second inning was I called it a nightmare scenario when I wrote the game recap last night, today's 3 things, over at bravestoday.com. Leadoff walk, and then there was 3 singles, a double, and 3 stolen bases in the inning. They scored 3 runs. López needed 33 pitches to get through the inning, which meant he was at 52 through the first 2. And I started to legitimately wonder, is he going to come back for the 3rd? And instead, he finished 5 innings. He allowed 1 batter over the minimum. He had a single in the 5th, but other than that, put down the side in the 3rd and the 4th, and faced 1 extra batter in the 5th. And there's still a lot of conversation. I know Jake over on Locked On Braves did something about regression on the pitching staff. I wrote a piece at bravestoday.com this morning for premium subscribers. Same thing, asking about regression for the pitching staff and everything. And I think what we're realizing now, and I say we as in me, I know a lot of you had already kind of realized that. I know you had already realized that, I'm sure. But Atlanta's offense, I'm sorry, back up. Atlanta's pitching staff was not a dominant staff. It was a good staff. They were getting elite results. And I think what happened leading into this series is a lot of factors, the smaller sample size stuff, was all working together for Atlanta to end up being an overperformance over maybe what the input said it should have been, right? Batting average on balls in play entering Tuesday was 250. Second lowest in all of baseball, behind the Dodgers. So Dodgers might also stumble a little bit here. Like, the league average is around 300. Atlanta had a 250 batting average of balls in play. A strand rate of 77%, which was second best in Major League Baseball. When a guy gets on base, can you end the inning without him scoring? The league average is around 70%. Their hard hit rate, fourth best in Major League Baseball. Only 14 home runs allowed. Like, all of these things were better than average. And so because of it, the Braves had the league's best ERA at 2.86 entering play on Tuesday. But all of the ERA estimators out there, expected ERA, field and independent pitching, Sierra, all of those had the Braves higher. So again, 2.86 ERA. Expected ERA was 3.42. Field and independent pitching was 3.72. Sierra, which is field and independent pitching, like crossed with expected ERA, right? Like they factor in the type of batted ball and everything, was a 3.82. I do think a lot of the gap between field and independent pitching and ERA was how many ground ball or how many double plays and ground ball double plays the Braves were getting. The Braves had the second most ground ball double plays induced in baseball with 20. The Mariners are one ahead of them at 21. And as a friend of the show, Chad Bishop's been tracking, the Braves have had a double play in 15 straight games. That is the type of thing that field and independent pitching isn't going to accurately pick up, because field and independent pitching ignores balls in play that aren't home runs, right? It is crediting you, and by you, I mean the pitcher, for things you directly control. Walks, strikeouts, hit by pitches, home runs. And, Sierra, again, similar. It's also factoring in batted ball quality. And the gap here, the discrepancy here, is because of the double plays, which are not something, it's somewhat sticky from the perspective of if you are able to get ground ball double plays, like you'll continue to get them, but it's more of, can your pitchers generate ground balls? It's more a factor of that than it is of your defense. Clearly, your defense matters, right? A better defense will turn more, but the ability, like getting double plays, is more a factor of the ground ball rate of your pitching staff than it is of your defense. Like, that's a bigger component of it. And then also, you have to have guys on base to do that, right? I guess the absolute best pitchers don't get a lot of those because they're getting a lot of strikeouts. They're not letting guys get on base. And the strikeouts, I think, does come up too. Atlanta's strikeout rate going into last night was 21.8%. It's 19th in baseball. And if you think about it, think about their rotation and the guys that they have. You don't have Spencer Schwellenbach. You don't have Spencer Strider. You don't have AJ Smith-Shawver. Instead, you're throwing Martin Perez and Jose Soriano. Bryce Elder is is in the rotation every turn. And so, like last year, the same first 17 games of the year, Atlanta averaged 8.5 strikeouts a game. They went 5-12 because the offense wasn't good. We'll get to that. But the pitching staff was, from a strikeout perspective, better. This year, they're averaging less than 8 strikeouts a game. And I think it's because of personnel, right? Chris Sale's stuff is virtually the same. He did get sick and have a low strikeout game, which also didn't help. But the Braves aren't striking out as many guys as we're used to seeing. And so because of that, there's more inherent variance because the impact of batted balls. And I think we're seeing that. We're seeing that this is not an elite staff. It's a good staff. It's a very good pitching staff. They were getting elite results. And now we've seen an example of how the pitching can take a step back. And the good news is I think the offense is good enough to cover. The Braves are scoring like 5.5 runs a game. And like we saw last night, a lot of what the Braves are able to do now, they're doing without the home run. Like, yes, like they hit 21 home runs in the first 17 games of the season. And a couple of those got them multiple runs because guys were on base. But this offense, especially in the last couple of days, is not reliant on the home run ball. Right? They're stringing together multiple hits. This is the Tim Hires offense, the fully armed and operational version of the offense. Dom Smith fits into it well because he doesn't whiff a ton and he's working counts and all of that. And I do think that this offense is good enough to cover for a good but not great pitching staff as you work on getting guys back, right? Spencer Strider, probably early in May. He makes his first rehab start tomorrow in Rome. He'll be throwing to Sean Murphy. And Strider's expected to make 3 before he comes back. So I'm guessing that's the very beginning of May, which is around the same time frame for Murphy, right? End of April, beginning of May. Hurston Waldrop is the one of the 2 guys who went down in spring with an elbow surgery that we're getting better. We actually haven't heard a lot about Swellenbach. He was in the dugout the other day, but we haven't heard a lot about his rehab and how he's doing. But we heard that Hurston Waldrop, the procedure wasn't as bad as they thought it would, they thought it could be or would be. And so he's probably a little farther ahead on the rehab than Schwellenbach is. So we'll get him back sooner rather than later. And it's all guys that have swing and miss stuff that are getting strikeouts. And so I feel like the pitching staff, provided there's no other significant injuries, which is always was never a given, especially with Atlanta. I feel like the pitching staff will be better, but they are really good. The early ERA wasn't real. The current struggles are also not fully real. And even then, it's mostly been confined to 1 inning. For Grant Holmes, it was really technically kind of 2, but really 1. Reynaldo López, it was really just the 2nd inning. So I feel like the pitching's been good enough. The lineup's been good enough for this to be a top team in baseball. But one of the concerns here I did have was on stolen bases. We saw Miami run wild on the base paths last night. Is that a problem? What can we do about it? We'll talk about that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsay Crosby. The running game was a problem for Braves pitching last night. They really struggled to contain Miami's guys. And when you look at what happened, a lot of people are going to by default blame Drake Baldwin because he's the catcher and he's the guy we see back there. And what is tough about this is we have so much data and information about the game of baseball, like high-level advanced data on the spin rate of pitches and launch angles and all of this stuff. I have not found a single source for publicly available data on the time it takes a pitcher to go through his motion and deliver to the plate. Time to the plate. I have not found that. StatCast does have a leaderboard for tempo, and it's from when the pitcher gets the ball back after the pitch until the next pitch. It's essentially measuring how well he does against the pitch clock. But we don't have anything about specifically time to the plate by the pitcher once he starts his pitching motion. But anecdotally, Reynaldo López is not fast to the plate. He is slow to the plate. And I think you saw last night, Miami identified that on film, and they had a specific plan to try and test the Braves and see could they take extra bags against Atlanta. Could they steal? And they did multiple times. The first inning, Jacob Marcy went to steal second, and the throw, they gave this throwing error to Drake Baldwin. And the throw was on the third base side of the bag. but it was still to the bag. Mauricio Dubon was standing on the bag. The ball hit his glove and rolled into the outfield. I really have an issue with that error being given to Baldwin. The throw was not perfect, but the fielder was on the bag and it hit him in the glove. I really feel like that should have been an error on Baldwin. Xavier Edwards then tried to steal second and was thrown out. And then, like I mentioned earlier, in the the second inning, Otto López stole second. He eventually came around to score on a single. Javier Sanoja stole second. He was thrown out at home by Ronald Acuna Jr. on a double. The runner, the runner on third scored, but he was thrown out from second base by Ronald. And then Jacob Marcy had singled to score somebody, and then he stole second, but a line out, good diving catch by Mike Yastrzemski, ended the inning. I think this is more on López than Baldwin. And bringing back an old chestnut here, two things can be true at once, right? Baldwin is he's below average on arm strength behind the plate. He doesn't have a rocket back there. So he's not helping. But I do think a lot of this was on Reynaldo López. I went and pulled, StatCast does have a pitcher running game leaderboard. It's in essence where they evaluate pitchers on their ability at preventing base runners from advancing via steal attempts or pickoffs. And then they ding you for balks and stuff, right? And if you go back the last 3 seasons, 24, 25, 26, and you look at every Braves pitcher in that 3 years combined, the 2 worst are Reynaldo López and Chris Sale. Now, I think for Chris Sale, that's just not necessarily putting any effort into it. He's a lefty. He's just not... He can look at them right away. I don't know why he's so bad down there. I think a lot of it's just... There's no easy way with his delivery to, have a really good pickoff move. Max Fried had a really good pickoff move as a lefty. Sale doesn't really have one. But López, he is, Sale was minus 11 on their valuation for this in 1,590 stolen base opportunities, meaning that was a situation a runner was on first with second base open, or I guess on second with third base open, and didn't steal, right? Reynaldo López was at minus 7, so just 4 points below Sale, despite only 800 opportunities. So half of the opportunities as Sale, and the score was more than half of what Sale's was. There you go. That got confusing the way I tried to word that, and I apologize up front. Part of me wonders, is this where when he was a reliever, he just wasn't necessarily too concerned with this because he was striking guys out? I say that. 4th on the list for Atlanta is Joe Jimenez. And then after that's Daisabel Hernandez, then Pierce Johnson, then Dylan Lee. A lot of Braves relievers were above average at preventing stolen bases. López was the worst righty on the team. He was worse than Bryce Elder, and Bryce Elder had a good 400 more attempts than he did, or opportunities for guys to steal. Watching the game last night, and I went back this morning and re-looked at a couple of those stolen bases, I really do feel like it's López. While I don't love Baldwin behind the plate as far as stolen bases go, I do feel like his technique has gotten better. He's been doing a lot of right knee down stuff, and one knee down is the standard of baseball now. But I've seen him get really efficient at pre-pitch positioning to be able to snap off a quick throw if he needs to. And on that stolen base that he caught last night, you can really see he was ready to throw it before the pitch was thrown. He had a feeling, and he got himself adjusted and in a position where he could make a really good throw if he needed to, and he did. But I do think that's more an isolated situation. Reynaldo López does need to spend more attention on holding runners. Let's be clear. You can't let 4 guys steal bags on you every time. The Marlins do run more than a lot of other teams, right? The Brewers are probably the only team that runs more than the Marlins. But when you put one thing on film, everybody's going to do it. And that's just my concern here, is that you're going to open up a can of worms. I do think it's more of López has to fix it than Drake Baldwin has to fix it. Just being honest. That'll do it for Braves today for Wednesday, April 15th. We've got a scouting report coming this afternoon ahead of tonight's series finale. And then I'm going to try to do an extra bonus show tomorrow since it's an off day. So stay tuned for that. Please like the video. Please subscribe, both here and at BravesToday.com. And we'll see you next time on Braves Today.